Recording. Welcome. So it is nice to see everyone today. This is our agenda for the panel today. So I'm going to go through a little bit of licensing and professional identity content, and then we're going to transition into the panelists that we have, and they'll each have some time. Go ahead and use the chat for questions. We will have some time for Q&A, and then we'll go into a little bit of related fields in mental health. So this is kind of like an elevator pitch, a little bit of everything in our field. And so that's what we're going to do today. A lot of information. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to our panelists. So professional identity. So the reason we are doing this is to provide our students in particular a little bit of context around what we're doing now, what the path they're on as counselors in training, and what it looks like maybe after you graduate. So licensing, certification, doc programs. So professional identity, according to Healy and Hayes, professional identity is a developmental process in which the professional should be able to articulate the roles and definition of their occupation, the philosophy or ethical principles, and relate those to those outside of and within the chosen profession. So with that, we're going to be talking about LPC, LPCC as it is in this state, LMFT, licensure process, exams, and doc programs. So professional identity, licensure, and certification. So this is something our students are starting to realize, I think. It can be a little costly going into our field because there are a couple different important pieces around our professional identity and what maintains our professional identity. So one of those pieces is our professional organization. So the American Counseling Association, American School Counseling Association. So ACA is kind of our big one in the counseling profession. And under it, there are lots of divisions that account for all the specializations under it. CACREP is our accrediting body. It's our national accrediting body that oversees that programs are providing the minimum, the training required to train and have the appropriate content in your program and experiences to develop that professional identity and competency. CCE, the Center for Credentialing and Education, a lot of our certifications go through there, exams go through there, and then NBCC, the National Board for Certified Counselors, is another term. So these are just terms to be familiar within our counseling umbrella. Certifications and licensure. California, for school counseling, it's the PPS. Nationally, there are two big ones with addiction, the Master Addiction Counselor or the Certified Drug and Alcohol Counselor, and that one's a little bit specific to California. LPC and LPCC, sometimes LCPC. It's got variations, but a professional counseling licensure is pretty common across the nation. Even though we were the last state to adopt this license, it's a pretty strong license across all the states. So we'll talk a bit about that today. But within all of these, and then the National Certified Counselor, these are certifications that sometimes have a licensing exam, but they hold our professional identity. And a lot of times, and in particular with the professional organizations, they advocate for us and us as a professional within that body. And then exams, the CPCE, a lot of our students are prepping to take that, our third year students this next month. That's a good prep for the NCE. So the National Counselor Exam, a good portion of the states, that's the licensing test for LPC. A few of the states use the NCMHCE, so the National Clinical Mental Health Counseling Exam. And this is one of those states. California uses the NCMHCE exam. CBEST is the certification test for school counselors in California and Colorado. I think it's a place or praxis. And then MAC and CADE are the addiction specialty licenses. This is not This is not expansive. This is just in a nutshell. There's a lot of acronyms in our field, and a lot of it's really tied to your professional identity. And that's what it means to hold those letters behind your name. So let's talk a bit about California. So California Board of Behavioral Sciences oversees all the master's level licenses. So LCSW, LPCC, and LMFT. The statutes, and I put some links in here. So when we make this available to you, you'll be able to click on those links so that you can see the penal code or the statutes that are behind it, because it's important to familiarize yourself with that. So associate in this state, associate is a designation that you hold post-graduation as you're acquiring hours for licensure. A trainee is a designation that you hold as you're a student in the program. When you are prepping to graduate, you'll be applying for that associate status, and you have to do so within 90 days. That 90-day grace period allows you to be in process of that application and still accrue hours. That's unique to California. Not every state does that, where you have to have a designation to be able to do psychotherapy. So there's a grace period here. For those of you that will be graduating that are in our program and that are here today, you would need to, as part of the application, and it's a pretty thick application, one piece of it is the degree program certification form. That's something that you would need from your program to certify that you've had the course content, that you've taken that within the program. There's an in-state, out-of-state. And so for our students, this is one of the requirements as you prep your application packet. That would go to our credential analyst. And you would need your sealed transcript. You would need a life scan. So the fingerprinting and then the application. So to apply for your associate status, you need to have earned a minimum of 60 graduate units. And since we are CACREP, and most states require either alignment with CACREP or require CACREP to be licensed, this puts you in a good position here and out of state. But you have to meet and complete 13 core content areas. And the California caveat to that is that you have to complete 10 of those 13 core competency areas within the degree program. And you have to have graduated with at least the diagnosis and psychopharmacology class. A few states require psychopharm. This is one of them. I think Vermont's the other. I'm sure I could be missing one, but not everyone does. This is a state that requires that to be part of your completion within that 60 units. 15 units of that is about advanced coursework. 6 units are practicum and field study, the 280 direct. We account for that with practicum and all of the internship under our under CACREP, because we're a CACREP accredited program. And then California, another caveat, and this is interesting for people coming out of state, because these are, if you're coming out of state, additional coursework, CE content areas you would need. And in California, when you're graduating from a program, ours is evaluated by the Board of Behavioral Sciences to be LPCC, and our LMFT as well. So you would have to have those 7 hours of child abuse and reporting within the program, and then other topics integrated into the program. You would register as an APCC through the Board of Behavioral Sciences, earn 3,000 hours of supervised experience in a clinical setting post-graduation. And once you submit your APCC, the board approves you to take your NCMHCE exam. In this state, you have to the board has to give you the approval to take that exam. So the 13 core content areas, these are the courses for students in our program that you would be taking to meet those. And so I'll make sure this is available, but it's all embedded within our program. And the specific coursework integration, it's embedded across our program courses. That would be human sexuality, spousal and partner abuse, child abuse and reporting, aging and long-term care, and then California specific, so methods of delivery with in reference to recovery-oriented practice, and then California cultures. The exception is that child abuse assessment and reporting is 7 hours has to be integrated into the course. And then scope of practice. So in California, to work with couples or families, you have to have that additional scope of practice, meaning that you have to have had courses embedded that would give you that added scope of practice. So that would be 6 semester units on courses that are focused on theory and application of marriage and family systems and experience working with couples and family. If you are moving out of the state, or if you are in any state moving, I always recommend move post-grad pre-licensure so you can follow the rules of the state you're moving to and check out their board. If you are moving 2 years post-license tends to be the other kind of happy place. California just under Senate Bill 679, just this last year, I believe 2020, 2020 approved a process where you can come in under a credentialing route, meaning that if you have been licensed in another state for a minimum of 2 years and have an active and unrestricted license, that you can apply in this state to be licensed. It's like a reciprocity process. You still apply, you take the couple of specific course content areas that are specific to California cultures, for example. You would take the law and ethics, and I think the child abuse and reporting is the other one. So you would take those CEs and then you would be able to apply under that statute, under the credential route here. If you are LMFT route, our program does follow COAMFT. This is a state where we follow CAMFT, but most others, that's our state professional organization for a lot of LMFTs. It's unique to California. So AAMFT, all other states, that's the organization, or that's the professional organization for LMFTs, and the COAMFT aligned courses and those extra system courses are typically required in every other state for that license. That was a quick snapshot to try to keep me on time as we were talking about licensure in a nutshell. And now I'd like to introduce the panelists, because after you graduate, the question is, once you navigate the licensing route, what do I do next? Do I want to go on for my doc? If so, what would I want to do it in? So we've invited some panelists to speak to a few counseling specific routes that we typically tend to take. Like my doctorate is in counselor education and supervision, and that's a required doctorate to teach in a KCREP accredited program. So that's one avenue. We have our own EDD educational leadership doctorate here. And we also have some time at the end to talk about psychology and licensed educational psychologist as kind of an adjacent field. So as we go into our panelists, I want to briefly introduce them. So here at Sac State, we have Dr. Burunda, and she'll be talking. She's a professor in our program, but we've lost her a bit to the EDD this last year. She's prepping for retirement. So she'll be one of the panelists you'll hear from. Dr. Meter, she is a department chair at Adams State, and she will talk about their counselor ed program. Dr. Freeman from University of Nevada at Reno will talk about their counselor ed program. Dr. Ng, and I think Dr. Massa may or may not be here, so we'll see if she's able to join us, and they'll talk about the Oregon State counselor ed and supervision program. And then we'll end with our colleagues over in school psychology. They can talk about psychology and licensed educational psychology. And now with that, I think I'm doing okay with time to pass it over to Dr. Burunda.
Thank you, Dr. Rivas. I wonder if I could do the share screen so I could put up my PowerPoint.
Is it giving you share screen?
Let's see. There we go.
Yes, ma'am.
And let's get started here. Okay. So thank you for having me here today. I'm Dr. Rose Burunda, and I'm actually, my home is in counselor education, and I've been borrowed for the last couple of years with the doctoral program, or EDD program. I was a school counselor for a number of years in the Bay Area, and did a transition after completing my own doctorate at the University of San Francisco. And because I've been at Sac State for a number of years now, it's not uncommon for me to get questions from my graduates, graduates of our master's program are saying, hey, Dr. B, I want to get a doctorate, and what do you recommend? And I know that you're working with a doctoral program at Sac State. And depending on what direction you're going, sometimes I end up referring them to other programs outside of ours. So it's important for you to know what's your pathway. So that's what I hope to cover in the next 10 minutes or so that you make the right decision. Myself, having been a school counselor, doing this with many of my seniors as they're getting ready to move on, the same with you, graduating with your master's degrees. What are your options afterwards, should you want to pursue a doctorate? So moving on, looking specifically at the EDD program in terms of who's gone through there from our master's program and what are they doing now. And differentiating the PhD versus an EDD. And so a PhD, like Dr. Rivas and many of my colleagues in counselor education, they're looking much broadly, developing more intensive statistical data, doing research and so forth. Whereas an EDD is much more practical in terms of what are some more immediate needs that I'm looking to resolve here and to study this within a 3-year program. So for people applying to our EDD, they already have a master's and now just looking to complete the doctorate itself. So what I'm presenting to you are examples of graduates from our master's program at Sac State and what they're doing now. And essentially, we've had all 4 specializations represented within our doctoral program. First one here is Dr. Lina Avila Sala, who is now an associate professor at San Joaquin Delta College. And you can see here with her particular dissertation topic, which is the final year of the 3-year study, looking at the education pathways for youth with autism and intellectual disabilities. So it was a very focused study. And now as an associate professor, she's applying her work of not only her master's, but her doctorate. So, and she was from rehab counseling from our master's program. Moving on, Dr. Daisy Padilla, she was a school specialization master's program for us, and she's now at Valley High, and she's a counselor and AP coordinator at that school. And what I did was I listed the dissertation topics on the right side for you to take a look at what they examined for themselves as a critical issue that they wanted to know a little bit more about and to focus their final year of study. Dr. Maron, associate principal at St. Teresa High School in Eastside Unified School District. Dr. Seifer, who is now the coordinator of research and data in the Thomas Unified School District. So you get a sense of that with a doctorate degree that they spent maybe a number of years working direct services, just as you are right now, those of you in your 3rd year who are right now doing your field study hours and in graduating and then do your field study, your post field study work now with a master's degree. But now with a doctorate, they're able to move on further within the systems that they're working. Here we have Dr. Eva Margarita Monguia, who was a career specialization student. And she went on to become Dean of Counseling and Student Services at Ohlone College. Dr. Krista Martinez-Salir, who was not only school specialization, but career. She's now working at Consumers River College as a counselor. She's also on the Elk Grove School Board. And she went on to become actually the tribal chair of her tribe of the Ion Band of Miwok Indians. So you see her particular dissertation study looking at tribal leadership and what that means in terms of her multiple roles in advocating for this particular population. Dr. Miguel Molina, who is now the Dean of Financial Aid and Student Success. And he actually worked at Sac State once he completed his master's degree in counseling, career specialization. Now he's a dean at a community college. So you see those steps that were made based on what he got from our MS program, then the doctoral program in educational leadership. Moving on, Chris Nicely, who was an MCFC. And with Dr. Nicely, Dr. Martinez O'Leary, I served as the chairs of their dissertations. He has opened up his own practice. You go down to Dr. Delmi Montenegro Spencer, who I chaired her dissertation. She's now vice president of student services down at Crafton Hills College. So really has accelerated her career development. She initially, master's degree from Sac State, was working at Sac State, went on to be a dean up at Yuba College, and now is down in Southern California as a vice president of student services. Dr. Adanda Hernan Chaides, who is Sac City as a full-time counselor, again, using what he got from us at Sac State. And more recently, Dr. Padilla, I chaired her dissertation. She's an EOPS counselor at Shasta College, and her dissertation focus was marked by the carceral system. So she was looking specifically at what happens with people who are leaving. They've done their time through the carceral system, and how do we facilitate their being able to reintegrate into our communities. So right now, within our EDD program, we have Ashley Tressa, who is a counselor right now at Chapman Elementary up at Chico, and she's in cohort 13, which means she's in her second year of our EDD program. And we also have Lorena Lopez, who's in the same cohort as Ashley, and is a counselor up at Woodland School District. And more recently, Miguel Lopez, who's cohort 14, all three of them are school specialization. Something that is now an added bonus, which last year when I was the intern director for the doctoral program, where I was able to work with other colleagues within the Ed Leadership program, and we now have what's called PASC Credential. So for those of you who are graduating with your school specialization credential, we all have a PPS, which is what I had when I graduated with my master's degree. And what happens is that you have to have an administrative credential to be able to move up within the school systems if you're a school counselor. Well, we now have embedded for anyone with a school specialization credential to be able to complete the preliminary administrative service credential. So at this time, Ashley Tressa and Lorena Lopez are in this program right now. So when they graduate at the end of next year with their EDD, they'll also have this PASC credential, and we'll be able to move up to superintendent positions and other positions within the school systems. So it's a real advantage because they don't have to go and take it elsewhere or take it outside the EDD. It's embedded within the program itself, and they actually get the field experience that they need as they're completing the actual program. So, and to give you an example, so when we look at what our EDD offers, you can see that we had mostly school counselors, people for school specialization, the career specialization, rehab counseling, and one person with the MCFC, because we're not focused as much at looking at clinical. However, Chris Nicely was able to use what he learned for his own starting a private practice. However, we can look at Dr. Zong, who graduated from our master's program. She had to go out to Kent State University, and I remember writing her letter of recommendation. And so like Dr. Rivas and Dr. Marshall and many of your professors within the counselor program, they went on to other places outside of California to get a K-CREP degree. And I recognize that several of the other panelists who are presenting are coming from K-CREP institutions. And there's advantages too. going to those institutions if you want to come back and teach at a K-CREP institution. But as far as those of you within school specialization, if you're looking at moving up within a school district, or if you're going on to work within a community college or a CSU or even a UC, our EDD will facilitate that process. So with the PhD, the career options are K-CREP, is you're going to be able to teach at K-CREP or non-K-CREP institutions. That's not the same for a non-K-CREP. So to be able to provide that pathway in which I've recommended people, yes, ours is suited for you, or it's not, based on what you want to do. So our graduates, we do our hooding ceremonies over at the arena downtown. Obviously, with the pandemic, we've been doing now virtual hoodings. But once our students do graduate with a doctorate degree, they're able to really activate a lot of other possibilities for themselves. And so if you're looking at what direction do I want to go, determine to yourself, what is my goal? Do I want to teach come back to a place like Sac State and be able to teach? And we have a lot of other counselor ed programs that are not Sac State that are non-K-CREP. But you're going to be able to open up more doors if you go on to complete your doctorate at a K-CREP institution, if your goal is to be a professor. If you're looking at those other avenues, you can consider our program, and you can see that our students are ending up very well. They're becoming deans, and they're going to be moving up within the school systems in which they're working right now. So with that, I think I'm really close to the end of my 15 minutes, and it goes by very quickly. So with the 2 minutes left done, Dr. Rivas, do you want me to just save those 2 minutes and then wait till the end of the presentation time?
Excellent question. I'm monitoring the chat, and right now one of the questions may be better suited at the end when we go through EDD and PhD and talk about each of the disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no other questions in there right now. So is that okay if we wait and everyone put their questions together?
Absolutely, yes. And I'll take a look at the questions and just try to get a sense of what might not be answered by the end, and see if there's anything specific to our EDD that I can respond to.
That's
okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Burunda.
Okay.
Dr. Meter.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow there. It sounds like you guys have a great program, which is exciting to have many options. So I'm Sherry Meter. I'm from Adams State University in Alamosa, Colorado. So we are about 4 hours south of Denver, very rural area. I'm just going to share an overview of our program with all of you. I'm actually going to give you a link to our website as well. I think what Dr. Burunda, I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly, mentioned is really thinking about fit. When you're thinking about a doc program and what it is that you want to do is really important. So that's one of the big things that we stress here at Adams. So we enroll every fall term, and we are a K-CREP accredited program. We had our first graduates in 2018 from our PhD program. So in terms of PhD programs, we're kind of the baby on the scene is what we always say. We've had K-CREP for a long-standing history with K-CREP, yet we kind of saw an opportunity. We have been delivering online programs since early 2000s, and we just saw an opportunity to be able to do that with PhD programs as well. So we really love that. We keep our cohorts small. We're a 61 credit hour program. We enroll every fall term, and we enroll no more than 12 students. There's some odd years that we enroll 13, and the reason we do that is one of the things, our mission and vision at Adams is we're in a rural area, and so we really focus on serving underserved populations and individuals that wouldn't otherwise have access to higher education. That's super important to us. And our niche is really preparing counselor educators who want to go on into higher ed, but specifically in an online world. That's become really important now with the pandemic. I think that we've seen a lot more ability and agility to pivot to online, but that's something that we've really been engaged in and excited about. So we have a lot of our students are working in higher ed settings right now as educators, similar to what Dr. Burunda was just speaking to. And so we're really excited about that, and we're really excited that they have experience and training in the online world. So we offer all of our PhD program online, but we do require 4 one-week summer intense residencies. So students come out, and the first 2 days of those residency, you're engaging in your own coursework. And then the last 4 to 5 days, you're engaging with our master's students who are online, but also coming for their week intensives. And at that time, that's when we get to do supervision of supervision, which is really exciting. And our master students have the great opportunity of being able to interact with our doc students. And we had, there's a mixture of having students both from our master's program that come into our PhD program and some that are not familiar with Adams State at all. And I think that what we really strive for is very diverse individuals. So our students they're all over the world. Literally, we have students living abroad right now, and then we have students in our own backyard as well. So that's really exciting for us. But the real meat and heaviness of what we really want to do at Adams is prepare individuals to go into higher ed settings. And we really want them to go into diverse settings and underserved areas. So that's one thing that we really focus on through the coursework and through the research is how do we help areas similar to our region that are underserved. And so I think that there's a lot of great opportunities there. We have 15 core faculty, which I think becomes a really big deal for students. When you're thinking about a doc program, I'd really encourage you to think about things like fit and also looking at the faculty. That's important to see that there's going to be a fit with your faculty. So we do all of our programming as cohorts from our master's through our PhD program. And the reason that we do that is because we do not want to foster competitiveness among our students. We really want to foster collaboration, collegiality. That's something that's really important. So our students apply and they're invited for interviews in January. And one thing that we tell our interviewees is that we're really looking for fit for people that will fit into our PhD program, and also individuals that will fit together as a cohort. Because despite which route you want to go, I think it's important to remember that obtaining a PhD is a lot of work, and the individuals that you go through that with, they're going to understand it like other people just can't understand it because you're living it with them. And so when we talk about fit for our program, we're also talking about fit with your peers. And so that cohort model becomes really important. Just that encouragement, that ability to persevere. So right now, as of spring 2021, we have graduated 4 cohorts. And as of the spring of 21, we will have 100% dissertation completion. So we're excited about that. And I think that what has really been helpful in that is that people can rely on one another. So it's a 61 credit hour program. We used to be 66. We just changed some of that because we wanted to be able to see, we were really student centered. So a lot of the feedback that we receive from students and based off of what our mission and vision is helped us do that. So it's typically a 4-year program. Dissertation seems to be where some people speed up or slow down depending on their life situation. It's kind of how that goes and how agreeable your dissertation chair is. But our dissertation chairs are very, I think you start building a relationship with people before you even come into our program, because it's kind of what we want to foster. And so when you get a dissertation chair, they kind of stick with you through all of it. And that's what's been really exciting. I don't know that we've had to date, and we've had, well, this will be 48-ish graduates. I don't know that we've had anybody switch dissertation chairs. And I think that's just about the relationship building. So that's kind of our program in a nutshell. I think Dr. Burunda said it best. Depending on what you all want to do, I think is important when you start looking at programs and thinking about fit. And I saw some of the other panelists, and I'm so excited to hear about their programs, because I'm like, oh, we have students that are wanting to go there, or, you know, undecided between us and them. I'm like, oh, you can't go wrong. So I think you have a great group of panelists here today and programs to pick from that you really couldn't go wrong.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Meter. So now let's hear about the Dr. Freeman with the University of Nevada at Reno.
All right. Well, thank you so much first for the invitation to be a part of this discussion. I'm so impressed that your program is providing you with this opportunity to learn about, we obviously like to host people on campus, but this is a much more efficient way to become exposed to a lot of different programs. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm glad to be here. I'm Brenda Freeman. I'm a professor of counselor education at the University of Nevada, Reno. We're just over the hill, obviously. And I've been a counselor educator. Let's see, I graduated from a K-Prep master's program. I worked direct services for a couple of years. Then my boss said, go back and get your PhD. So I was kind of shoved back to school. I got my PhD in counselor education and supervision, worked in the field of counseling a couple more years, and then took a temp position as a counselor educator and have never left. So I've worked at 3 different counselor education programs. So I've worked both private and public. And I love the comments that have been made about the importance of fit with the program, because I've seen different programs. And I think that it's just a beautiful experience when a student has a perfect fit with the program that they've selected. And then we're able to really help them along the way with their educational journey. So let me tell you a little bit about us. We are, well, first I have to tell you about Reno. I moved here 8 years ago. And I love Reno. You probably know that we're very close to Lake Tahoe. We're about 45 minutes. My house is 45 minutes from Lake Tahoe. We're nestled in the mountains. We're high desert, but we're in the mountains, and we're a downtown campus that's residential. So you have a lot of people living on campus, but we're downtown. So it has it's a beautiful campus with a very unique feeling to it. So let's see. It's a lot of people are moving to Reno because it's kind of a mecca for hikers and skiers and people who like the outdoor world. Let's see, and so our program is face-to-face. We're very relational. Our faculty is very relational. We're teaching online now because of COVID, but we will go back to face-to-face. In fact, I'm having the doctoral students, I asked them, they've all been vaccinated, so they're coming to my house for a couple of classes late in the spring because we're just missing the face-to-face contact. I agree with the comments that have been made about online though, and the advantages of that. It's just our specialty and who we are. We're a very small program. We take 2 students each year. We never have more than 6 to 10 in our program because we want to handhold every student. We want to treat every student very uniquely. And that's how we go about doing that. Let's see, our program overall, we're a K-Prep accredited program. Our doctorate is in counselor education and supervision. And we have a Downing clinic. It's called the Downing Clinic. We serve community members and also campus students. And we do we do play therapy. We do a lot of group work out of the clinic. We do substance abuse work. We also are just starting a new career counseling program that's started by one of our doctoral students who is passionate about career counseling. And so we have this sort of very active community clinic, and the doctoral students are involved in that they do the clinical supervision for the master students. And we also have GA positions for doctoral students to run the clinic. And so we like that aspect of our program. Our program then it's full-time on campus except summers. So it's 3 years full-time, very structured. You know exactly what you're taking. You're taking them with the other doctoral students in this small group. And it's in the summers, most of the students are either working on comps or they're working on their dissertations, but they're not required to take any coursework in the summers. So mostly our focus is for students who would like to become counselor educators, although we have some students who go into clinical leadership as well. So in the 5 K-Prep, you'll find in any of the K-Prep programs.
Hello?
Hello,
Hey.
can you hear me?
I think we have somebody probably forgot to
Oh, well,
mute.
good.
Okay.
If you are on the call, if you could do me a favor and mute.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
So our program, if you were saying, you know, every program has some things they're good at in the K-Prep 5 areas that a K-Prep program has to prepare students in clinical teaching, clinical supervision, and research, and advocacy and leadership. And so every program has to, you don't get depth in the counselor programs, you get breadth because they're required by K-Prep to teach across those areas. And so if you said, well, what's our specialty? All of our faculty are involved in social justice and multicultural issues. I have 22 years of research and consulting experience in tribal work. Christine DePew, all of our faculty are doing that kind of work. So that's an area of emphasis. I would say what we're really good at is that giving students 2 semesters of opportunity to do direct clinical supervision of other students and supervised teaching. All of our students teach in our master's program under clinical supervision. And then what we do, because we're research very high in the Carnegie system, we're all active researchers. And so we help our students to be active researchers. From the very first semester in the program, the students are put on faculty research teams, and they're also required to do peer research teams with each other. This is apart from their dissertations. We present research with our students at WACES and at ACES, and we publish with our students. So that's just a part of that, is that's a part of what the faculty do. And so we take our students along with us. Also, because they're taking 21 credit hours of stat research courses, they hear a lot about research. So let's see, I'm talking fast. Let's see. Okay, so I want to tell you that the students who come are often out of state, primarily out of state, who come to our program. And so we offer graduate assistantships because students need that kind of financial assistance to be able to come. And the assistantships range from research. Right now, I just hired a student. We're doing a 13 state, it's a $7.1 million grant project to.
Oh, it muted you for a minute. Nope. Dr. Freeman, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm not watching my time, so you might have to cut me off. Tell me if I've gone over time. I get on a roll.
I think we're doing good. Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, I'm just saying that, for an example, you can have a research graduate assistantship we've got this $7.1 million 13 state grant where we're looking at suicide, depression, and mental health issues in ag producers and workers, including California migrant workers. So we're excited about that. And so I just hired a 12-month research assistant out of our doctoral program to work that project. We have a research GA right now, actually one that we haven't filled, that works for 2 faculty doing in-depth studies in drug and alcohol, infant mental health, and community participatory kinds of activities. And then we have teaching GAs, and they support us and help us with our teaching. They come into the classroom, they also grade, and they do other kinds of work, assistantship. And then of course we have people work in the clinic, the Downing Clinic, helping schedule clients and helping supervise the interns. So the graduate assistantships will waive your tuition, and the pay's not great. It's between $1,800 and $2,000 a month. So the pay's not fantastic, but our students find a way to get by. So it seems to work out. I think what they like about the GAs beyond the financial assistance is the opportunity to be a part of the faculty team. One of the GAs has worked for me. I'm the K-Prep liaison, and they've worked with me side by side, learning the K-Prep process, helping write the K-Prep report. And that's a really good learning experience. So let's see, again, we're 69 credit hours, 3 years. We have 100% graduation rate in 3 to 4 years. Some of the students take a 4th year. That usually depends upon licensure issues. So, but the curriculum is set up for 3 years, and we really think that works to get students in full-time, focusing on their work, researching, teaching, learning, connected with each other, and then graduating in 3 years. Most of them take either counselor ed jobs or clinical leadership positions. So our dissertation process is structured. You start the first semester, it's an assignment all students do called 10 to 3, 3 to 1, which is for topic selection. So we start you out first semester, we work on topics, and every semester you have a little chunk of it, because we think the way to take on an overwhelming project is to just do it a little teeny piece at a time. And then you find that you're right on schedule if you just follow the plan. And the students do follow the plan because they're supporting one another. You select your own dissertation chair. I advise all students for 1 semester. I'm the temp advisor while they get to know the other faculty, and then they select their own chair. So with that, I would say what we do is we usually do 2-day interviews, except this year. we do 2-day on-campus interviews. So students come into Reno, we pay your housing, you come in, and we the students take you out to dinner and get to know you. And then the next day you interview with faculty, you write on site so we can make sure your writing skills are good. You talk to us about your career goals. It's a really fun experience. And that's kind of how it works. Do you have any questions for me? I think I gave you some material, a little bit of material.
We do. We have a little bit of material from everyone, which is great. And Dr. Ng won't be in until 3, so this gives us plenty of time for Q&A. So what I'm going to do is try to spotlight all of our panelists so far and have the people in our Zoom room go ahead and raise your hand or put questions into the chat. Dr. Burunda, would you mind saying something so I can find your name and just trying to spotlight you? Add spotlight, got it. And then Dr. Beater, would you mind doing the same? I don't know why this is
no problem.
Why this is proving so hard. All right.
Were you able to get me?
I think I did. I think I did. Okay, so let's see. First question, Dr. Marshall, would you mind? Question from you. What does an ideal candidate look like for a doctoral program in terms of career and academic experience?
I'll go first, and I'll be brief because my other 2 colleagues here may have additional information or different information. What I recommend in our program has gotten much more competitive. Last year, when I was the interim chair, we had over 30 applicants. Yeah, I think it was close to 40 applicants. This year, we had over 70 applicants for the program, and we're only taking like 20. And certainly, as you're completing your application, it's apparent to us whether you have taken the time to really determine whether this doctorate is the doctorate that is going to help you with what you're going to do. And so we're looking at how we're going to be investing time in you. We want to make sure that our time invested in you is going to actually make a difference out in the world. So if someone just like, yeah, I want a doctorate degree and I want to be called Dr. So-and-so, we could, it's apparent in the application. It's fuzzy. There's not a real sense that there's been a synthesis of information to determine that this is really where you want to go. So with that, it's a sense of do you have experience out there? Lorena Lopez, for example, when she was getting ready to graduate from the master's program, our counselor ed program, she immediately came to me and she said, Dr. Brenda, because I want to apply to the doctoral program. She knew that I was already doing some work over there. I said, Lorena, go and get some experience. I ended up being the one interviewing her when she applied to our doc program. She was able to speak directly to the issues that she sees going on in Woodland School District. And that was apparent, not only in the way she articulated, but in what she wrote. And so when you think of the three of us who are here as part of this panel, and we're looking at the applications, is how clear are you with what you're wanting to do with a doctorate degree? So that's what I would contribute. So Dr. Freeman and Dr. Meter.
Dr. Meter, go ahead.
I would echo some of what Dr. Burunda said. We're really looking at fit. And so within a cohort, we have some students that come straight from a master's degree into a PhD program, and others who have spent some time in the profession just trying to figure out what it is that they want to do and have found this passion to come back and really prepare other individuals at a macro level and beyond the supervision that they might be getting. So I definitely think that similar to what Dr. Burunda is speaking to, we've seen an increase in our application, which has made the admissions process much more competitive in nature in terms of years of experience, along with I think that one of the biggest things that we look for is, do individuals have a solidified professional identity in counselor education, and how do they see that translating into how they train others? And then also looking at the diversity component is really important to us, and how we're helping support underserved and marginalized populations is super important. So that's become something that's been increasingly we place more importance on, is, do individuals getting a doctorate really understand what that entails? I would say exactly what Dr. Burunda talked about. We all go by our first names at Adams. And so it can be really interesting to see individuals who come in who think that holding a PhD is just about titles. And there's a whole lot more that goes into that. And so we want to make sure that individuals understand that, the gravity of that.
I'd like to switch to the first generation question. May I do that?
Yes, let me read it for everyone. So the question is, what are 1 or 2 tips that you have for either first generation doctoral students or your younger self thinking about a doc degree?
I think that's a great question. I was a first generation doctoral student. I came from a very impoverished family background, and nobody thought about going to college. And so even going to get a bachelor's degree was kind of a scary experience. And so when it came to selecting doctoral programs, I think my mentality was, well, am I good enough? I had this sense I was a phony, and I just couldn't possibly be smart enough to get a doctorate. That was just the way that I experienced it, coming from my family background. And I think as a tip around that part, if you find yourself having those kinds of feelings, is to take a look at the reality of the situation. How have you done in your master's program? What have your evaluators said about you? Your supervisor said you're doing a great job. And sort of combat that first generation, I must be a phony feeling, if you have any of that. The second tip that I would give for first generation students thinking about doctoral programs is that sometimes they're not wired in as much. I certainly wasn't, as second generation students. And so in my program, and I'm sure in the other programs represented on this call, there's an opportunity to talk to current students. And so that's the first thing I do if a student wants information, is I connect them with a current doctoral student. Talk to the doctoral students, the other students, and find out about the experience, find out how they went about applying, find out what works for them and what doesn't, because there may be inside information that first generation people just don't come by naturally, but you can get that information from faculty, but also from other students. And so I think it's a really good question, and I appreciate you asking it.
If I can add to that, that not everybody has a doctorate. And I will tell you what I would tell my seniors when they would be applying for college, post-secondary. They're like, I want to go to Harvard, or I want to go, and I'd say that's wonderful. And I would recommend that you apply multiple places as well. I did not get into the first institution that I applied to for my doctorate. And here I am 20 something years later, serving on the faculty of Counselor Ed since 2002, was the interim director of the doctoral program last year, and here on my final year, associate director of the EDD program. University of San Francisco was wonderful. It wasn't my first pick, but it served me well. And so do not be discouraged if your first pick does not come through. Open up your options, okay? There are wonderful institutions out there. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And as somebody who's had to evaluate applicants and seen that sometimes just that one letter recommendation that just was not as strong as the others of the 70 something that we've had to review. And that sometimes that makes the difference, or just that variation of a GPA, or the quality of your own personal statement. And so that, we're having to look at multiple variables, put yourself out there with a number of institutions. Don't just go for one.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I remember graduating from my master's program, and my first passion was school counseling. And my husband said, yeah, you need to get a job. So a PhD wasn't even on my radar. It was something that was encouraged to me by a former mentor and faculty member. So don't rule things out, whether that's where you're thinking about going or you're just trying to survive your master's program. I think keeping those options open. I say that a PhD program opens a lot of doors that you never knew you might have available to you. And so I really like what Dr. Freeman said in terms of first generation. It's never not a possibility. And I think there was another question on there regarding if graduating from a CACREP accredited program, needing to come from a CACREP accredited program, going into a CACREP accredited doctoral program. At Adams, we rank you. So we have a rubric score. And so part of that rubric is how many years of experience do you have? Did you come from a master's program that was CACREP accredited? And like all CACREP accredited programs, anytime we take students in from non-CACREP accredited programs, we evaluate your master's to make sure that you have the CACREP core. So just wanted to attend to that question too.
In our case, it doesn't influence your points. We just do a transcript review, and at the time of admissions, if we're offering you a slot in our program, we tell you which, if you're out of a non-CACREP program or you have a CACREP degree that's older and you've got some dated coursework, we'll say these are courses you need to take, or often to save students some effort, we'll say audit these courses. You need a refresher in some of these courses, and we'll just let them know up front so they know what that looks like. In our case, the admissions process, the first step is the academic review. And if students look strong in terms of their GREs and their undergraduate work and their graduate work and their references, then we move on to the second stage, and we're all about dispositional assessment. Of course, it's a research area for us as well, but we're all about looking at the person and how their dispositions fit our program as well as their curriculum.
We have a few more questions that we'll get to. So food for thought, is it good to have experience before they apply for the doc? Funding and grant or GA opportunities. And there was one other around adjunct versus not. So food for thought is Dr. Ng has joined us. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about OSU, I'm trying to spotlight your colleague. If you can just give a little snapshot of your program, and then we'll go right back to question and answer, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to share that, but I just couldn't get there. Let me share screen. For some reason, my computer just didn't allow me to do that. But okay, share screen. All right, can you see? All right.
Yes, sir.
That's good. That's good. Thanks for giving us some time. And Dr. Adamasa, who's our program lead, is not able to be with us, but Dr. Cass Diamond is actually in our midst. And if you have questions, then Dr. Diamond and I will be glad to share, to respond to you. Okay. I just want to briefly give you some highlights. Our program is accredited, I believe it's according to our CACREP directory is since 1991 when we started our PhD program, I believe, right? But I think our CACREP program for masters, I think we began in 1986 or something like that. Yeah, and for the program, we have a total of 100. We require a total of 150 term credit hours. We run by quarter systems, and 56 of these credit hours can be transferred from a master's level program, like your counseling program. We will let you bring that in, but the doctoral level courses is minimum. You have to have 94 credit hours according to our program of study. And our program is hybrid in nature, which is part-time. At the moment, we do not have a full-time program, but in the past we did. And that means about 40% of our seat time is actually in person, and 60% of the seat time equivalent, 60% is online work. Right now, we are using Canvas to organize as our learning management system. And it's a full year program all year round in the sense that we run 4 quarters per year. And for the cohort will begin, the term starts, the starting term is in the summer. And each term you will do 2 courses. So that's why it's part-time in nature. So for your first 2 years, and also the last content class happens in your 3rd summer. So in your first 2 years and 1 summer, you will do 2 courses per term. And of course, in between, if you're ready, you can actually start your internship. So that can actually go up to 3 courses, if that's what you want to do. And also the 2 weekends of full day classes in Portland. That's where you come in for the in-person time. And generally, it happens on week 2 and week 8 in the 10-week term. But a little bit different when summer is concerned, but I don't want to go into the details of that. And for example, in week 2, let's say you have class A, it's on a Friday, a full day from 9 to 5. You come in for the in-person. And then class B on the second day, which is a Saturday. So for that weekend, you come in for 2 courses. So usually students would come in on a Thursday evening, and then leave on a Saturday evening if they are able to get transportation. Say we have students across the country, like in New York and New Jersey, as well as California, right across. And in week 2, you repeat the same thing. Week 8 rather, class A on Friday and class B on Saturday. Right, and then that's how you go. The pattern and everything is kind of prescriptive in the sense of what courses you're going to take. And right now, the course is $590 per credit for the cost of each credit at OSU right now. And practicum and internship that mainly held online for weekly meetings, but practicum itself, because we merge practicum with advanced theory, so that practicum is also considered as a content course as well as your clinical course. And another highlight is that we don't do traditional dissertation. We have a dual manuscript style in which you have to complete 2 research-based studies that are interconnected. And so instead of having 5 chapters in the traditional dissertation style, we have 4 chapters. Chapter 1, intro, and then you have 2 studies, chapter 2 and 3, and then chapter 4 is just a summary of implications. And we run by a cohort model. That means most students move through the first 2 years together at the same time. Because you come in, we are not able to provide you with full-time curriculum. So everybody moves through a part-time curriculum in a sense. And content focus, according to the CACREP, 5 CACREP domains for the doctoral studies, counseling, teaching, supervision, leadership and advocacy, of course, research. And the program orientation is geared towards social justice. We know we are not there yet. We have a long way to do, but we are working hard and we are trying. And we need our students to hold us to the fire as well, because none of us is really there. If we ever claim that we are a completely well done social justice advocate, please don't come to us, because we are just phony if we ever claim that. All right, so OSU PhD counseling, other characteristics of our students, they're full-time or part-time school counselors, mental health counselors, or master's level instructors. Many of them are actually teaching in community colleges or other area regional universities at the teaching undergrad courses, or even some programs do have master's level instructors, but they need to get that PhD in order for them to contribute as core faculty. Average years of completion is about 4.5 years. They are sometimes, occasionally, you have one person or two person in the cohort will finish like in 3 years. That is very hard. But we have a 9-year completion. For a PhD program, the Oregon State require you to finish in 9 years. So our completion rate is at 89%. So pretty good, pretty good. So, and you can visit our website for a lot more information, particularly pay attention to the student handbook. Look at the student handbook, read page by page. You will get a lot of information about the program, what the program stands for, what the program requires of you, and what the program can offer you. And Dr. Dykeman has recently done a webinar and information like open house webinar with a lot of applicants, interested individuals, and we have posted it on our website. Give some time to watch it, and you will know that some of your questions were also being posed by other interested individuals. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So I have all of our panelists spotlighted for just a few more questions. So in that vein, Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Ng, what words of advice would you have for your younger self when you were applying? Or what words of advice do you have for first-gen applicants? And then some general questions, GA and scholarship to help pay for doc. Does conference presentations and research help your application process? Is it important to gain experience before you come in? So if you want to pick a few.
Can I start with one of those?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was a master's student at the University of Washington, one of the 4 original KCREP institutions, and my advisor was Larry Brammer, who was one of the 4 founders of KCREP. And so the last couple quarters, I was in my master's program. He asked me to sit behind the one-way mirror and give supervision, give feedback to the new students. And I went to him and I said, Larry, this is fantastic. I love doing this. Can you do this as a career? And, the KCREP founder, I said that, by the way. And he said, absolutely, Cass, you can do that. He says, now I want you to go out and be a school counselor for 2 years and then come back and see me and we'll get you into a doctoral program. And that was fantastic advice. And I've now been a full-time counselor educator for 27 years. So that's the advice I would give you. And that's not advice coming from me. That's coming from one of the 4 founders of KCREP.
Wonderful. I was in on the conversation about first generation, second generation college students, and I'm an international student from Malaysia. I'm a Chinese Malaysian. I needed to say that because right now, given the climate right now, I need to first tell you that this is geographically, culturally, this is who I am. This is where I come from. I'm proud of my heritage, and I'm here, and I've been here for since 1992. I came to the U.S. to seek graduate education, and so I'm also first generation college students. And imagine how much more difficulties there are, right? If you are international students, everything is different, but don't give up. Like I think early on, I think it was Rose who said that it was the first time when you apply, you didn't get into your first place of choice. It's the same happened to me too. I can tell you where I applied to, University of North Texas. I did my master's there. I applied for the PhD program there. I got rejected. And never mind. And I have an advisor, Dr. Karen Kern, who is no longer with us. And he told me, he said, Cartman, instead of waiting for another year, because they only admit once a year, why don't you try Texas A&M? That time was East Texas, which was not as prestigious as UNT for sure, but try that. So I went over there and the professor there liked me and admitted me. And it was a much better fit actually compared to UNT. And I enjoyed my time there and I received so much mentoring by my professors there. Dr. Jerry Trusty, if you might have read about his work, he was such a nice man, nice guy. And he looked at me and said, hey, I have a research assistantship. Would you like to do that with me? Sure. So I got assistantship from there and I was learning how to teach as a doc student. I have to teach 2 classes. So for those of you financially, if you need some assistance, look for programs that provide you with that. But Oregon State does not, because we are a part-time program. It's run through eCampus, so we don't have the luxury to provide assistantship. So I'm sorry about that. But a lot of us, in fact, most of our students, they're on study loan, right? Financial aid. And yeah, just if the first try, second try didn't work, try again. But most importantly, for our program, I think to have enough, minimum a year or 2 experience working as a counselor will give you a lot of knowledge because we look at that. And because of the pool that we normally have, they tend to be more experienced people. Now, in terms of age, somebody asked about the age. I have students who are about my age. And of course, I'm pushing 61. So don't give up if you think that I'm too old for that. No one is too old for anything, right?
That's beautiful, because that was one of the questions, is what advice do you have for older students? And I think that was a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. Any other final questions from the group? Does anyone want to speak up? There's nothing new in the chat, or any final thoughts from the panelists?
There's a question here they asked. Can I just respond to the? It's
Yes.
credit. Yeah. Each of our doctoral classes is 3 credit hours. They're not the same as semester hours. I know some schools run by semester. We run by quarter. I think most of the West Coast schools run by quarter system. So it's 3 credits. Yeah. Which is equivalent to only about, I would say, 1 semester credit is equivalent to 1.5 term credits. Yeah.
Some advice as you apply for programs. As somebody who's read so many applications for people coming into counselor ed program, and for the past 10 years or so for the doctoral program as well, is that when I see those letters of recommendation, I can tell when it's a professor or employer that is using just sort of a standard letter and they're putting in your name. And I know that, somebody who writes a lot of letters for people as well, that it helps when you can prompt them with, do you remember when I provided, such and such? So I know that Kate Bosworth, for example, if she's out there, hello, Kate. Kate is a research assistant for one of my colleagues, Dr. Leslie. I have seen Kate present to the California Teachers Association. I have seen Kate do X, Y, and Z. So I hope that in the future, Kate will come back to me and say, Dr. Brenda, would you write a letter recommendation for me? And I will speak specifically to what Kate has done that I'm so proud of, and that I can attest to her capacity to pursue a doctoral degree. So with that, it's that you want someone that's going to attest to what you've done. All of you are wonderful people. All of you are kind and engaging. So when I see those words, it applies to everybody. But I want to know specifically what you've done. For example, this is a leadership program. What have you done to change the nature of the reality that we live in. And given what we're doing and what we're seeing in this nation right now, in our doc program, we're looking for people who are gonna make a difference, okay? So look at those letters of recommendation and how they're speaking to you specifically.
Yeah, I agree. I say the same to doc students. You're going to go out and look for a job, right? And you would need references. I won't be able to write you any references that meaningful references if I really do not know you, if you and I have not really worked together closely, that I don't have, and I have not had the opportunity to observe your work ethics, your skills, your knowledge. So be very, very strategic in your career development, and also working with people who will be able to attest to your competence and your disposition also.
Could I speak to an excellent question I saw there for, in terms of if my goal is to be a therapist, why a PhD in counselor ed, which I think is an excellent question. And our students come into our program with one or two goals. Half of them and the cohort want to be a full-time faculty, and the other half want to have a portfolio career. They want to do some teaching. They want to continue to work clinically, often full-time, and they want to be able to do consultation. And so what the doctorate gives you is the ability to engage in teaching opportunities you would not have solely with a master's degree, and also in consultation. And it gives you a gravitas in terms of being out there on the consulting market as well. So, both are very legitimate goals for a doctorate, a portfolio career or a full-time faculty career. So, yeah. And I think that's an excellent question.
Beautiful way to put it too. Alex, we have a hand raised. I'm so sorry, Dr. Ng.
No problem.
I just wanted to say thank you to all the panelists that have participated today. There has been such a wide range of options and considerations presented today. And I think the question I wanted to ask as we're all here together is just, you shared a lot around the benefits of pursuing a doctoral or PhD degree in regards to profession and the allure of the different programs. But I would love to hear from each of you of how it's made you a better therapist or counselor, or just overall in your practice. And I hear a lot of mentorship, but just thinking about that level as well, or how you pass that on and inform the field.
Alex, I think that's a great question. I think that school counseling is where my heart has always been. And so being in a rural community, I have a small private practice, and I noticed I do more pro bono than I do anything else. And also just being able to give back to the school district and the ways that we can collaborate for research and grants in those areas. So I don't think that they're exclusive things, right? I think that it all blends together really nicely. And I think that that's part of that professional identity, figuring out where individuals want to be and how they want to give back to their communities, because that service piece is so crucial. But the ways in which we do that, I think when you move on to a doctoral program, is through ways of service and research. So I would say that it's all it's all one package, right? Like I feel like a better school counselor because I can understand. I'm not in the trenches like I once was, but especially when the pandemic hit, we noticed in a rural area how individuals just needed support in a different way, how our teachers, our administration. So I think being able to practice, but then also teach in a doctoral program that had students available to assist was really important. So I think it really informs everything that we're doing. And I would say you'd be hard pressed to find a counselor educator or somebody that holds an advanced degree that isn't also practicing, because it's important.
I agree with that. It's a perfect answer. I really agree with that. I would just add that I remember going into my doctoral program and taking advanced counseling theories. And then all of a sudden I realized, okay, I don't exactly know what I'm doing as a counselor. I'm doing it from the gut and from my intuition, and because I have good basic listening skills. But my connection of theory into practice was pretty weak. And I didn't realize that. I actually thought I was pretty good, but then I went into my doctoral program and realized, taking the coursework, I started to see, oh, okay, and I need more training. So I need to go to these CBT trainings, and I need to become a Gottman therapist, and I need to do these other. And so it sort of opened up the world of postgraduate training, where you get more specific skill sets, and I think it helps your therapy skills in amazing ways. But I would echo also, in addition to direct services, consulting would, I've done consulting for most of my counselor ed career. That option would not have been available to me, I don't think, if I didn't have skills to manage data and to do evaluation and to sort of see a broader picture, see the mental health piece, but also see how do you evaluate that and how do you use the research and stat skill sets to make a program better, so that you're helping not only one person, your client, but programs and states and tribal nations. You're helping a broader group of people because you're able to use the skill sets that you've gained in your doctoral experience.
I would add to that, in the doctoral program, there are a lot of learning through many different areas. Like, for example, you learn through new contents, right? Like Dr. Freeman talked about, then you realize, oh, I only know a little bit, right? Now I really know a little bit more, and I know a lot more that I don't know. And then when you interact with your cohort members, with other students, you realize that you can learn so much from them, right? That environment is very, very important. By having to go through learning how to teach, learning how to supervise, you have no choice but to bring your game up another notch. So that is like a pressure cooker. You have to do that. And the more you teach, the more you learn. The more you supervise, the more you learn. So that becomes a very good learning environment where you allow yourself to be there for a prolonged engagement. For those of you who are qualitative people, you get engaged in 3 years, 5 years, or 4 years. So that is going to be very good. And I just want to add something, because I love international work. That's what I do a lot. And your PhD is like an international passport. You get a lot of opportunity open up to you. If you have a travel bug, if you like to expand your multicultural competence or humility beyond what you can get in your own state or in your own country, but you want to know a lot more what you don't know when you go out of the country. And that is something that is very, very valuable. And then you have so much to bring back.
So now, as we have Dr. Holland and Dr. Brock here, I'm trying to figure out how to add the spotlights. One of the starting questions was, what is the difference between EDD, PhD, PsyD, and with that LEP? So I wondered if this is one of the questions we can, you all can add or contribute to. That would be wonderful.
Absolutely. Dr. Brock, would you like to start with regard to the LEP?
There we go. I had to unmute myself. I am happy to do that. Dr. Rios, did you want us to talk a little bit more, though, about our perceptions about the difference between the professional versus the academic doctorate, PhD, PsyD, EDD?
Yes, sir.
I can start with that. You want me to start with that?
Wonderful.
Okay. Well, this question comes up a lot with my graduate students, and what I frequently tell them is that, and this gets back to something Rose was saying earlier, or Dr. Burunda was saying earlier. Sorry, Dr. Burunda and I are just really close friends, so it's hard for me to get too formal with her. But at any rate, when I have these conversations, I say pretty much the same thing that Dr. Burunda just said, which is it depends upon what you want to do with it. Now, if you're really entirely focused on an academic career, you want the PhD. That doesn't mean if you get a professional doctorate, an academic career is ruled out. It just is the most typical pathway into becoming a professor. If, on the other hand, you're really focused on professional practice and you want to advance, say, in a school, into administration, the professional doctorate is more along the lines of what you need. For example, our doctorate in educational leadership, an EDD. Again, that doesn't rule out becoming an academic. So really you want to begin by asking yourself first the question, where do I think I'm headed? But recognize that one pathway or another, PhD, PsyD, EDD, doesn't necessarily rule anything out. Anything to add to that, Dr. Holland?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, you know, along the way, I mean, for myself, I ended up getting my master's in school psychology and then a PhD in psychology, clinical psychology. So I went on to get my licensure in the state of California to be a clinical psychologist, but I teach in the school psychology program. So there's also ways that you can combine certain you know, missions and directions that you'd like to take and have them fold nicely. And I echo what was said just a bit ago about the incredible richness of continuing to practice while also teaching and mentoring and consulting. I have a private practice in downtown Sacramento, and I see children, families, and adults in my private practice. And then I bring that knowledge set into the classroom that week with my graduate students. Was there a question, Dr. Rivas, about the steps to becoming a psychologist in California? I wasn't sure if that was asked.
Not necessarily that. So we're trying to do a quick download of professional identity, all the fields, licensure, post-licensure, and because we are limited in the programs we have doc-wise in our institution, this is kind of a quick download or elevator speech about every option.
Excellent.
And,
Yeah.
and so I thought hearing from professionals from around here would be the best way for them to kind of information gather.
Absolutely.
And then another piece, I don't know if you want to add to this part of it, there was some questions around what advice do you have? What did you look for when looking for a doc program, first gen students or professional goals, things in that vein?
If I may add, compare the curriculum. Look at each program, look at what courses, what requirements, look at them side by side. Then you will see the difference. And there's also another thing to consider. Not all in counselor education, there are some programs historically they issue EDD, but they are as legitimate as equivalent to a PhD. Because a lot of politics in different state system, some schools are not allowed to grant PhD, but they will still, like for example, Northern Illinois, they have a very credible EDD counselor education program. It's as equivalent as a PhD program, but because of history, they were only allowed to grant EDD. So you actually need to look at the historical things behind it. But of course, the EDD tend to be less research intensive in perception, but some programs do require a lot of research as well. So these are the things that you need to go in and look at the history of the program, talk to people who know the program, and then you compare apples and oranges and see what you want.
Agreed. Excellent points. The one thing I would also add, and then I'll talk a little bit about becoming a licensed educational psychologist in California, is the importance of practice. Is it possible to jump right from a university setting into from a doctoral program into a professorship? Yeah, it's possible. But not only is ongoing practice important as you're engaging in an academic position like becoming a professor, but it's important beforehand. Now, licensed educational psychologist is a licensure option. It's administered by the Board of Behavioral Science Examiners, which also administered some LCSW and MFC licenses. It requires at a minimum that the individual first obtain a master's degree. Now that master's degree needs to be in school psychology. So if you wanted to practice independently as an LEP, the first thing you want to do is sign up get into a school psych training program like the one Dr. Holland and I currently offer here at Sac State. After that, the requirements are very straightforward. First, you practice as a school psychologist, and you need to do that for 3 years. 3 years of practice as a school psychologist, with one of those years being supervised. In our program, we call that the internship year, but one of the years needs to be supervised by a credentialed school psychologist. After that, it's really straightforward. You do your live scan, you get your criminal background check, and then you take an exam, an LEP written exam. So essentially, become a school psychologist, practice for 3 years, take and pass the LEP written exam. And then with that, through the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Board of Behavioral Sciences will issue a license that will allow you to do the work of an educational psychologist in a private setting. It's really just that straightforward.
Dr. Holland, if anyone was like, hey, I want to switch to psych, like maybe I don't want to stay in the counseling kind of discipline. If I wanted to go to psych, what would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. More than likely, you could use the current master's if you're in a current master's program. You could use that master's to then move into a doctoral program. You could get a doctorate in either a PsyD or a PhD. PsyD would be more of the practical focus, the practice of psychology. PhD offers you the ability to do both. You could teach at a university or work at a VA in addition to doing practice work. And once you have obtained your doctorate, then what you would want to do is to get licensed in the state of California. And that's fairly straightforward. You would need in total 3,000 hours of professional experience, and 1,500 of those hours would need to take place after your doctorate. Then you would need to make sure that you've taken all the pre-licensure courses. There are a handful of courses such as partner abuse, child abuse assessment, and substance abuse. And then you would just need to pass the exam by the California Board of Psychology in order to get your license in California. But certainly most doctorate programs take folks from many disciplines in their bachelor's. Commonly it's psychology, but there's a lot of other, child development or social work or other related fields. And again, if you're already in a master's program, you can jump then into receiving your doctorate at a university.
Well, one important distinction between the licensed educational psychologist and the licensed psychologist is the doctorate. Again, to be an LEP, you only need a master's. To be a licensed psychologist, and this is actually a different board, you need the doctoral degree.
There's a question that Joe asked, if I may respond to it. The OSU program is a traditional PhD program in counseling. Right now, it's actually accredited under counsel education and supervision. So you learn a lot about supervision, learn a lot about teaching counselors, and you have a mother load of research as well. So you are prepared in all 5 KCREP training areas at the doctoral level. And as I mentioned before, compare the curriculum across the programs that you're interested in. Even within counsel education, programs are not the same. Sometimes you have some programs would emphasize more on certain things than others. So you just go with what you think you are more drawn towards, or are certain particular professors in the programs that you would like to study under. That might be something that you want to consider. Of course, some of us would want to look for where assistantships are abundant, right? Like for me, I couldn't have done my degree had I not been given the teaching assistantship and the research assistantship. I just want to add a little bit. If for those of you who are international students right now in this forum, I know it's hard at this point, it's not easy. And sometimes the system is not that, it doesn't realize that a lot of international students have a lot of limitations. Like for example, for you to jump from finish masters, you have to immediately get into the doc program. If not, you have to leave the country. And to get internship, post-master's internship as a practitioner might not be that easy because most sites would not want to sponsor your work visa. So you will have to plan very, very carefully your trajectory. Talk to your advisor who might know a little bit more. And if your advisors do not know some of these intricacies, they might be able to refer you to some other people in other programs who might have some of these experiences to tell you what are the potholes that don't ever step into and how do you protect yourself, because there's a lot of legal and political issues are involved. I hope that makes sense.
That is so wonderful. I really appreciate you adding that piece because I think that does apply to quite a few of our students. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you guys all of you giving us your time for this quick like elevator pitch. Just, Zoom fatigue. We squeezed a lot into an hour and a half. We'll have the video available. And I'm happy to share that with everyone so that you can view it when you have time to really soak it in. And then maybe you can contact the panelists for more information or contact the institutions. But thank you, Dr. Ng, Dr. Dykman, Dr. Holland, Dr. Brock, and for Dr. Meter and Dr. Burunda and Dr. Freeman who had to go. I appreciate you so much. So on behalf of all of our students and everyone who'll be watching this, thank you so very much for your time. Thank you.